My mom passed away when I was 7. She was an only child, and her folks had passed away long before I was born. She left her estate to my dad with money and an account for my future. My dad has a hard time dealing with her death. He fell apart. I went to go live with my aunt because he was not doing well. So, basically, I lost both parents in one go. He came to visit me every once in a while, and after about 2 years, he did come and get me. He had met my stepmother, and he wanted a family again. I wish he hadn't. My stepmother isn't a terrible person. She was actually pretty nice. She didn't try and replace my mom, and she was fair in how she dealt with myself and her daughter who was my age. My father, however, overcompensated a lot. He would give my stepsister anything to try to win her over. The year we turned 16, he bought us a car to share, but she monopolized it, and would only let me have it when her mom insisted I get a turn. My dad would tell me to just let her have it. I eventually just stopped using it at all. I got scholarships and got out of the house as soon as I could. When I graduated from college, I approached my dad about getting the money my mom left me to put a down payment on a house. He told me that there was only like $5,000 left. That was really strange. I did receive an allowance from my dad while I was at school. It was great because it meant I didn't have to work. I could just concentrate on school. It turns out he used the money to pay for my stepsister's college, and give her an allowance, and pay for the insurance on her car, which it turns out he also bought out of that money. I was, and honestly still am, furious. I had him show me the account. There was actually a little over $6,000 in it. I took it all. I used it to get an apartment in town and never went back to his house. I've done well since and finally own my own home. I'm married to an amazing woman, and we're building a great life together. My stepsister, on the other hand, is kind of a screw-up. She was recently arrested for drunk driving, again. So her trial is coming up, and if she completes an inpatient treatment for her alcoholism, she may get probation rather than incarceration. My dad doesn't have any money to help her. She doesn't have any money either. So my dad approached me. I said no thank you. He said if I didn't help her, then he would have to mortgage my childhood home. So I told him that he could have all the money my mom left for me. He is mad at me and says that I don't understand what he went through to get where he is. I told him that neither him or the kid he sucked up to with my money were my problem. Am I the a-hole? Holy duck, not the a-hole. This is really sad, and I'm so sorry. Your dad screwed you over, and your mom is probably haunting him right now. He should have never used that money for anyone but you. If you are ever able to get a lawyer to take a look at what happened here, if they are still alive, the lawyers your mom used, and see if you could sue, take your childhood home back. Your father stole your money, and he should suffer the consequences. First of all, your dad is a thief. He's lucky you didn't file charges over this. This was your money, and he was trustee. Secondly, your stepsister has been ruined by him, and will never straighten up if someone keeps paying. You are not the a-hole, but your father sure is. Your father and stepsister both made their own choices in life. You would not be obligated to fix them, even if they hadn't been a-holes to you. And to your credit, you initially just told him no, so you certainly didn't rub it in his face. It was only when he tried to guilt you into helping him that you brought up the past. Even then, it wasn't like he did it gratuitously. If he hadn't stole your money, or even if he paid it back to you after getting caught, you would legitimately have more money with which to consider his request. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. The fact that he got mad at you for not bringing it up is proof that he's not sorry for his actions. If he was remorseful at all, he would have reacted with shame and sadness. He would have recognized that you of all people did not owe him anything. The only reason for him to get mad is because he believes that you do not have the right to be mad at him. I, 18 female, recently attended my father's wedding with his new girlfriend, which me and my 2 sisters, 20 female and 25 female, traveled across the country for. Due to my father being unfaithful to my mother with the woman he was now marrying, and the 30-year age gap between them, my sister and I were uncomfortable with the whole situation, and were trying to get through the weekend without getting too upset, and spending time with the little family we had at the wedding. His girlfriend's family refused to speak to us. Whilst we tried to have a good time and ignore the inevitable toasts and speeches that came before the ceremony, mentioning how uncomfortable his girlfriend's family felt about my father having a pre-made family, and how they found it difficult to welcome us into theirs. When time for the wedding came, and we were walked down the aisle as bridesmaids before the incoming bride walked in, I suddenly felt overwhelmed with emotion, and tears began to form in my eyes. As it got to the I do part of the ceremony, my sister and I held hands and braced for the ring bearer to stand up in a short while. As this was going to happen, I quickly composed myself and released my sister's hand as I had been tightly holding previously. As the vicar, or priest, I'm not entirely sure of the technical term, began to drone of the legal requirements to carry out the wedding, such as asking those present if they were aware of any impediments to the marriage. Something sparked inside of me, and I quickly raised myself out of my seat, and before I could stop myself, exclaimed to the priest and those who were staring at me astonished, of the wrongdoings that had led up to this poisonous marriage that had disrupted so many lives. My father turned to me with such undeniable anger, and as hard as I try, I cannot stop picturing the pure disgust he possessed as he locked eyes with me, before swiftly pivoting to face his fiancée, who let out some kind of whimper and dashed out the room, followed by her maid of honor and two other seemingly loyal bridesmaids, and finally my father. I sat back down into the pew my sisters and I had been assigned, feeling defeated. As I had disrupted the wedding in such a fashion, my father and his fiancée were not able to marry as they had planned. It has been 5 months since then, and I still feel an impending sense of guilt as I did on the day. However, I have been informed that another ceremony will take place in a few weeks, that I am not allowed to attend. Although I feel bad for making such a scene, I can't help but feel as if I did what was right, due to all the pain my mother and family faced due to his previous actions. And this gives me a warped sense of glee when I reflect on the incident. But I think I'm in need of an outsider's take on my actions. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You are valid in your feelings, and it is wrong for your father to pretend nothing wrong ever happened. His whole new relationship was based on a wrong, and it is a slap in the face to those affected by it up to this point especially, to pretend otherwise. It's a little naive for his girlfriend and him to think that what happened was okay, and there wouldn't be any repercussions from it. For your sanity, I would consider a clean break and seek professional help in working through this, as this can and will affect your overall well-being. I don't get why you girls were there in the first place if he cheated on your mom. He doesn't seem like a good father for you and your sister, or one you hold very dear. Did they really speak out loud about being uncomfortable about his kids being there, or am I reading it wrong? I don't get why you wouldn't say something at that moment. I actually, in a way, understand why you couldn't keep quiet if they said stuff about you and your sisters. But when you write what he did, it sounds like your mother is way better off without him. So you guys, and the younger woman, kinda made her own bed. But I'm sorry this happened to your family. It doesn't sound easy. But you should have said something before the actual wedding ceremony, or just left altogether. But hindsight is 20/20. I get that it was way too much. But in this specific situation, you're the a-hole, but your dad is the biggest a-hole. You're the a-hole, only because you actually went to the wedding. If you didn't agree, you should have just not went. However, you did speak now and not forever hold your peace. So it was the last moment it could be done. High-key wishing I could have witnessed this. I, 26 female, have been married for 7 years. My husband and I were young when we got together, and as a result, I became like another kid to his parents. But that's a story for just now. Anyways, I never thought of his sister, 27 female, as anything less than my own. So when she had her kid, 2 male, I was excited. I've got my own kids, but I was happy to have a nephew. So my sister-in-law lives next door with her parents. The issue is that I've become the baby drop-off center. I need to run to the store. Turns into me texting her 4+ hours later, trying to figure out where she is. It's always someone else's fault on why she's late. I'm in college online though, and I can't exactly do my work when her kid is on a sleeping schedule of 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. My kids attend school and need their sleep. They have a decent bedtime. I'll also add, I have a hard time telling people no, currently in therapy for that among other issues. Because of those reasons, when she came to me saying she had a job offer, she asked which of 2 schedules worked for me. Didn't ask if I would be the babysitter. I told her neither did. So we agreed to a schedule where I'd watch him half the schedule, and her parents would watch him the other. Usually her parents back out, but I told her that wasn't going to be able to happen. Well, her first interview, training, is today. She told me days ago her dad was watching her kid, since he'd probably still be asleep. Okay, awesome. Then, at 2 a.m. the day of, she messaged me and said, "You're still able to watch him tomorrow, right?" I hope so, 'cause I have no one else. I was pissed, and I told her so. I told her I'm being taken advantage of, and letting me know last minute she wasn't having her dad watch him isn't okay. Dad isn't sick, just didn't want to. I told her how it isn't right that everyone else can say that they don't want to, and it's okay, 'cause she knows I have a hard time saying no. It ended with her apologizing and begging me to keep him, but I still said no. She told me she will lose the job if she can't find a babysitter, and I told her he isn't my kid, so it's not my issue. My mother-in-law then messaged me telling me she's going to straighten me out, and that if my nephew is such a bother, then I just won't keep him anymore. She also told me I'm an awful person for screwing over her sister, and she expected more from me. My husband agrees with me, but won't say anything to his mom and sister. Am I the a-hole? Should I watch him anyways? Not the a-hole. Both you and your husband need to stand your ground. You aren't responsible for sister-in-law's kid. If your mother-in-law's so upset, why doesn't she look after her grandchild? Both you and your husband need to start setting some boundaries with sister-in-law. Otherwise, they will continue to take advantage of you not being able to say no. Your kids and your family come first. Edit to say, your husband is the a-hole for not backing you up here. He may agree with you, but him keeping quiet is just as bad. He needs to grow a backbone and speak to his sister and parents. Why won't your husband say anything? That seems like a total a-hole move from him. You, on the other hand, are not the a-hole. Grandma needs some straightening out, though. If she's that concerned about her grandchild, she can be his full-time unpaid nanny. Oh my, the entitlement for me is mind-boggling. Not the a-hole. You need to hold your ground. You weren't planning on having the child, and you never agreed to be backup this day. What if you did have plans? They just assume you don't, and that it's not important. Does she pay you, or would she be paying you for these days? I mean, babysitting occasionally as a favor is one thing, or both babysitting helping each other. But regular childcare, expecting you to be available as backup on demand, that should be compensated. She needs reliable childcare or a more flexible job. You aren't obligated to do it. And if it happens day one, you know it will continue to happen, and is not something you agreed to, or should make your problem. I, female 28, have been friends with Brittany, female 28, since we were about 5 or 6, and we are very close to this day. As part of having a friendship with me, she was around my brother, M, would be 30, quite a lot as children, and their romance blossomed as teenagers. They were married 5 years ago. Unfortunately, my brother passed 2 years ago in a tragic accident and left behind a mountain of debt for Brittany. She was 8 months pregnant at the time and ended up moving in with my parents. Her and her daughter, Lilac, 2 female, live with my parents to this day, and the family alternate watching Lilac so Brittany can get her degree. Everyone has really rallied around Brittany in such a trying time. For Christmas, my husband, male 30, bought an all-inclusive trip for him and I to explore Paris and have a romantic getaway. I have always had France on my wish list, and I'm so grateful to him for such a wonderful gift. We leave in February for 2 weeks, and it is honestly a dream come true. I told my parents about the gift, and they then told Brittany, who called me in floods of tears asking that I take her instead of my husband. She said that she will never be able to experience a romantic getaway like that with her own husband, and that we, my husband and I, could just go again at another time. She said she gave up everything to raise Lilac, and she would love for us to have a girls' trip like we did when we were younger. I told Brittany that that was not possible. This was a gift from my husband to me, and I fully expected to have a romantic getaway with him. Brittany told me that I was punishing her for being a widow, and that it was unfair I would have a love affair in Paris while she cried at my brother's grave. My husband thinks she is trying to make me feel guilty, but said that he would step out of the trip if I would like to take Brittany. The thing is, I want to go with my husband, but my parents have since called me to tell me that they would watch Lilac and that I should not rub my happy marriage in Brittany's face. My mom told me I would be selfish to leave a grieving widow over Valentine's Day. Am I being an a-hole? Not the a-hole. That's such an unreasonable request, and frankly, if that's the way she feels, she should be going for therapy. You're not throwing your marriage in her face, you're celebrating your marriage between you and your husband. Oh my God, what is wrong with the people around you? If you and your husband were just dating now, and he gave you a ring and proposed to you, would she expect to be the one he married? Because after all, she doesn't have a husband anymore. I understand how difficult it has been for her. It's a very sad story. But you guys are doing all you can to help her. I can't even believe she would ask you to do that. I think she's wallowing in self-pity a little too much, or maybe she's just not thinking clearly. But it was a ridiculous request, and there's no way in hell you should honor it. Your parents should also know better. I don't understand what they're thinking. A trip to Paris is not cheap. It's not like you're going to the local beach and you can afford to go there next year too. It was a gift from your husband to you. Go with your husband, and tell the rest of them that you should try to save for another trip, and then you and her can go together maybe next year. Yes, she lost your husband, but you lost your brother. I'm sure you could use a little happiness in your life as well. Go to Paris. Do not feel guilty. Enjoy the hell out of yourselves. The rest of them will get over it. If not, they're not very good friends and family.